What happens when a seasoned actor known for his sharp wit meets a talk show host determined to make headlines at any cost? The result is television gold that nobody saw coming, and what unfolded on The View became one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us about your most awkward television moment you've ever witnessed. Because this one is going to blow your mind. It was supposed to be a routine promotional interview. Russell Crowe had appeared on countless talk shows over his decades-long career, promoting everything from epic historical dramas to intimate character studies. The View, with its panel of opinionated co-hosts, seemed like just another stop on the publicity tour for his latest film. But Joy Behar had other plans that morning, and what started as a simple conversation about acting quickly spiraled into something much more intense. The atmosphere in the studio was already charged before Crowe even took his seat. Behind the scenes, production assistants had whispered about Behar's mood that morning. She had arrived early, pacing in her dressing room, muttering about making this interview memorable. The previous week's ratings had been disappointing, and there was pressure from network executives to create more buzz-worthy moments. Behar, never one to shy away from controversy, saw this as her opportunity to shake things up. When Crowe walked onto the set, the audience applauded enthusiastically. He waved with his characteristic confident smile, seemingly unaware of what awaited him. The other co-hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, greeted him warmly, discussing his latest project with genuine interest. But Behar sat back in her chair, arms crossed, studying him like a predator sizing up prey. "Russell, welcome back to The View," Whoopi began, her tone friendly and professional. "Tell us about this new film you're in. It looks absolutely fascinating." Crowe settled into his chair comfortably, launching into a well-practiced explanation of his character's journey and the challenges of filming in remote locations. His deep voice filled the studio as he described the months of preparation he had undergone for the role. The audience listened intently, and even the camera operators seemed drawn into his storytelling. "The thing about this character," Crowe continued, "is that he represents something we've lost in modern society. A sense of honor, of doing what's right, even when it costs you everything. I think audiences are hungry for that kind of authentic heroism." That's when Behar struck. "Oh please," she interrupted, her voice dripping with disdain. "Authentic heroism? From someone who's made a career out of playing pretend? Let's talk about real heroism, shall we? Like standing up for women's rights, instead of just playing tough guys on screen." The studio fell silent. The other co-hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances. Crowe's expression shifted slightly, his friendly demeanor replaced by something more guarded. But his voice remained calm and measured. "I'm sorry, Joy, but I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at. Are you suggesting that actors can't have opinions about moral courage?" God. Behar leaned forward aggressively, sensing what she thought was weakness. "I'm suggesting that it's easy to talk about honor and doing what's right when you're reading lines someone else wrote for you. But when it comes to real-world issues, where's that same energy? Where were you during the women's marches? Where's your voice on reproductive rights?" "Well," Crowe replied, his tone still remarkably even, "I wasn't aware that my appearance here today required a political litmus test. I thought we were here to discuss filmmaking and storytelling." "Everything is political, Russell," Behar shot back, her voice rising. "Your silence is a statement. Your privilege is showing. And frankly, it's disappointing. I expected more from someone of your stature." The audience began to murmur uncomfortably. Whoopi tried to intervene, but Behar waved her off dismissively. She was in full attack mode now, and nothing was going to stop her from making her point. "Joy," Crowe said carefully, "I appreciate your passion for these issues, but I think you might be making some assumptions about me that aren't entirely accurate." "Am I?" Behar's voice was sharp now, cutting. Then, enlighten us, Russell. Tell us about all the causes you've championed. Tell us about your activism. Because from where I'm sitting, all I see is another privileged white man who thinks he can coast on his fame without taking any real stands. The other co-hosts looked mortified. Sarah Haynes was visibly cringing, while Alyssa seemed to be trying to think of a way to change the subject. But Crowe remained composed, though there was now a glint in his eye that suggested Behar had pushed him further than she realized. "You know, Joy," he said quietly, "there's something interesting about your approach here. You seem to believe that public performance of political beliefs is more important than private action. That's a fascinating worldview." Behar's eyes narrowed. "Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. I've been fighting for progressive causes since before you were famous. I've put my career on the line for what I believe in." "Have you?" Crowe asked, his voice still calm but now carrying an edge. "Or have you simply found a way to monetize outrage? Because there's a difference between genuine activism and performative anger designed to boost ratings." The studio was now dead silent, except for the hum of the cameras. Behar's face was flushing red, and her hands were clenched on the table in front of her. She had expected Crowe to back down, to apologize, to give her the submissive response that would make her look powerful and righteous. Instead, he had just suggested that her entire persona was nothing more than calculated theater. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How dare you question my sincerity? I've been standing up for what's right while you've been playing dress-up and collecting paychecks." Crowe smiled then, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of someone who had just realized he was dealing with a bully, and who had decided he wasn't going to be intimidated. "Playing dress-up," he repeated thoughtfully. "That's an interesting way to describe the craft of acting. Tell me, Joy, what would you call what you do every morning when you sit in that chair and manufacture outrage for the cameras? Because if we're going to talk about performance and authenticity, I think we should be thorough in our analysis." Behar's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The question hung in the studio air like smoke, and everyone could see that Crowe had just landed. A devastating blow. But Joy Behar hadn't survived decades in television by backing down from a fight, even when she was clearly outmatched. "Don't you lecture me about authenticity," she snapped, her voice becoming shrill. "I speak truth to power every single day on this show. I call out hypocrisy wherever I see it, and right now, I'm looking at it." Crowe leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed despite the venom being directed at him. "Truth to power," he mused. "That's a lovely phrase. Very dramatic. Tell me, when was the last time you actually challenged someone with real power? Not a guest who's here to promote a movie and can't fight back without looking like a monster, but someone who could actually affect your career?" The question hit like a sledgehammer. Behar's face went from red to pale in an instant. Because they both knew the answer. The View's entire format was built around attacking safe targets. People who were contractually obligated to be polite. People who needed the publicity more than the show needed them. Real power brokers, network executives, major advertisers, they never sat in that guest chair to be grilled about their ethics. "I challenge powerful people all the time," Behar stammered, but her conviction was wavering. "Do you?" Crowe pressed gently. "Or do you wait until they're already falling from grace, then pile on to look brave? There's a difference between courage and opportunism. Joy. Courage requires risk, and I'm curious about what risks you've actually taken." Whoopi tried desperately to regain control of the interview. "Russell, let's get back to your film." But Behar cut her off again, though her voice was less confident now. "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the first thing about my career or my values." "Actually," Crowe said, pulling out his phone with deliberate slowness, "I know quite a bit. You see, when someone ambushes me on live television, I like to understand who I'm dealing with. So this morning, while you were preparing your attack, I was doing some research." The color drained completely from Behar's face, The other hosts looked terrified. In an age where every public statement was archived forever, having someone actually fact-check you in real time was a nightmare scenario for any television personality. "What are you doing?" Behar asked, her voice now smaller, uncertain. "Well," Crowe began, scrolling through his phone. "I found it fascinating that someone so passionate about women's rights was completely silent when your own network was covering up harassment scandals. Not a single tweet, not a single statement on this very show. Very interesting pattern of selective outrage." "That's not fair," Behar protested weakly. "There are things happening behind the scenes that you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Crowe replied smoothly. "You pick fights with people who can't fight back, and you stay silent when speaking up. Might actually cost you something. It's quite brilliant, actually. All the appearance of moral courage, with none of the actual risk." The audience was completely silent now. This had gone far beyond uncomfortable television into something genuinely devastating. Sarah Haynes was staring at her hands, unable to watch. Alyssa was trying to signal the producers to cut to commercial, but the cameras kept rolling. "You're twisting everything," Behar said desperately, "taking things out of context." "Am I?" Crowe asked. "Let's talk about context then. You've spent the last 10 minutes attacking me for not being activist enough, suggesting I'm somehow morally deficient because I don't perform my politics the way you think I should. But when someone examines your own record using the same standards, suddenly context matters." "This is ambush journalism," Behar accused, but her voice lacked any real force. Crowe laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "Ambush journalism? Joy, you literally ambushed me the moment I sat down. You had this attack planned before I even walked on stage. The only difference is that I came prepared to defend myself, and apparently, you didn't expect that." "I don't have to defend myself to you," Behar said, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. "No, you don't," Crowe agreed pleasantly, "but you do have to defend yourself to your audience. These people tune in because they trust you to be honest with them. They believe you when you claim to be fighting for justice and equality. Don't you think they deserve to know whether that's actually true?" "No, John. No." Behar's hands were shaking now. She looked around desperately for support from her co-hosts, but they were all studying their notes or staring off into space, clearly wanting no part of this destruction. "You're just angry because I called you out," she tried weakly. "Called me out on what exactly?" Crowe asked. "You made a series of assumptions about my character and my politics without knowing anything about me beyond what you've seen in movies. Then, when I pointed out the flaws in your reasoning, you accused me of being defensive. It's a fascinating strategy, actually. Attack someone, then when they respond, claim they're proving your point by defending themselves." "That's not what I did," Behar protested. "Isn't it?" Crowe pulled up something else on his phone. "Because I'm looking at your Twitter feed from last month, where you used almost the exact same playbook against a young actress who dared to question one of your political positions. Attack, then claim the response proves you were right all along. It's quite a system you've developed." The studio was now so quiet you could hear the air conditioning running. This wasn't television anymore. This was a public dissection. Behar looked around desperately, realizing that she had picked a fight with someone who had not only refused to be intimidated, but had come armed with facts and a level of preparation she never expected. "I think we should take a break," Whoopi finally managed to say, her voice tight with tension. "No," Crowe said firmly but politely. "I think Joy wanted to have a conversation about authenticity and moral courage. I think we should finish that conversation. Unless, of course, she's changed her mind about the importance of speaking truth to power." Behar's eyes darted to the cameras, realizing that millions of people were watching her credibility crumble in real time. She had built her entire career on being the tough questioner, the one who held people accountable. But now, She was the one being held accountable. And she had no idea how to handle it. "This isn't fair," she whispered. And for the first time, her voice carried a note of genuine desperation. Crowe looked at Behar with something that might have been pity. "Fair?" he repeated softly. "You know, Joy, that's exactly the word I was hoping you'd use, because it gives me the perfect opportunity to talk about what's actually fair." Behar seemed to sense that something terrible was coming, but she was trapped. The cameras were still rolling. The audience was watching, and she had nowhere to hide. "Is it fair?" Crowe continued, his voice calm and measured. "To ambush a guest on live television with personal attacks designed to humiliate them for your own entertainment? Is it fair to assume the worst about someone you've never met based on nothing more than your own prejudices? Is it fair to build a career on tearing people down while hiding behind the pretense of moral superiority?" Each question hit like a physical blow. Behar's breathing was becoming shallow, and sweat was visible on her forehead despite the studio's air conditioning. "You wanted to talk about privilege," Crowe said, putting his phone away and looking directly at her. "So let's talk about it. You have the privilege of this platform, this microphone, this audience. You have the privilege of attacking people who can't really fight back without destroying their own careers. And you've used that privilege to become exactly the kind of bully you claim to oppose." "Stop," Behar whispered, but her voice was barely audible. "You asked me about my activism," Crowe continued relentlessly. "Would you like to know what I actually do? Not the performative social media posts or the carefully staged photo opportunities, but the actual work? I fund education programs for underprivileged children in rural Australia. I've quietly donated millions to women's shelters without ever seeking credit for it. I mentor young actors who are struggling with addiction and mental health issues. But you'll never see me tweeting about it, because I don't believe genuine compassion requires an audience." The contrast was devastating. While Behar had spent years broadcasting her supposed virtue to anyone who would listen, Crowe had been actually doing the work without fanfare or recognition. The audience was beginning to murmur, and not in support of their host. "You want to know the difference between us, Joy?" Crowe asked. "You perform activism. I actually practice it. You shout about justice while I quietly work toward it. You attack people on television while I help them in real life. And the truly sad part is that you can't even see the difference anymore." Behar tried one last desperate gambit. "You're just saying this to make yourself look good." Crowe smiled sadly. "Joy, if I wanted to make myself look good, I would have just sat here and taken your abuse like every other guest who's been in this chair. I would have apologized for crimes I didn't commit and praised you for your bravery in attacking me. But I'm not interested in looking good. I'm interested in being honest. And honestly, what you did here today is exactly why people are losing faith in media personalities like yourself. The viewers love this show," Behar said weakly, grasping for any lifeline. "Do they love the show, or do they love the drama?" Crowe asked. "Because there's a difference between building people up and tearing them down. You've chosen to build your career on destruction, on manufactured outrage, on turning every conversation into a battle. And the saddest part is that you probably started with good intentions. You probably really did want to make the world a better place." For a moment, something flickered across Behar's face. A hint of the idealistic young woman who had first entered television decades ago with dreams of meaningful journalism. "But somewhere along the way," Crowe continued gently, "you forgot that the point isn't to win. The point is to understand. The point isn't to destroy your opponents. The point is to find common ground. The point isn't to perform outrage for ratings. The point is to actually solve problems." The studio was completely silent now. Even the crew members had stopped moving. This had become something unprecedented. A genuine moment of reckoning on live television. "I came here today to talk about a movie," Crowe said, his voice now filled with genuine sadness. "A story about redemption, about the possibility of change, about hope in dark times. Instead, You turned it into this. And I think that tells us everything we need to know about what's happened to discourse in this country. Behar was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face as the reality of what had just happened sank in. She had not only been defeated, she had been exposed. Millions of people had just watched her credibility evaporate in real time. Joy, Crowe said softly. It's not too late. You could choose to be better tomorrow than you were today. You could choose to build instead of destroy. You could choose to listen instead of attack. The question is whether you will. With that, he stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the edge of the set. As he reached the curtain, he turned back, one last time. Ladies, he said to the other hosts, thank you for having me. I hope your viewers will consider what they've seen here today, and think about what kind of discourse they want to support going forward. And then he was gone, leaving behind a shattered host, a traumatized panel, and a studio full of people who had just witnessed something they would never forget. Behar remained in her chair, staring at the space where Crowe had been sitting, unable to process what had just happened. The cameras finally stopped rolling, but the damage was already done. In the span of less than 30 minutes, her carefully constructed persona had been systematically dismantled by someone who had refused to play by her rules. The other hosts sat in stunned silence, knowing that they had just been part of television history, but not the kind anyone would want to remember. What was supposed to be a routine promotional interview had become a masterclass in how quickly things could go wrong when someone finally decided to fight back. As the crew began to clean up around them, one thing was crystal clear. Joy Behar had picked the wrong target, and Russell Crowe had just taught her a lesson she would never forget. So, what do you think about this incredible confrontation? Have you ever seen someone get completely outmaneuvered on live television like this before? Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable moments from the world of entertainment. What's the most savage comeback you've ever witnessed in real life?